Welcome, everybody, back to the X Factor podcast. And we're just coming around Christmas. You're sitting down, enjoying your family. We have football going on, and we had some good. We didn't have good football games. We had blowouts, um, and I'm gonna get to those here in a little bit. Um, get into a lot. We have week 16 games. Um, a lot of games to go through this week. And then college football playoffs continue next week. A lot of football being played over these next couple of weeks. Um, and we're going to start right now with the Christmas games. Um, Chiefs, Steelers. Steelers, if you would have asked me a couple of weeks ago if this team was a contending team, I would have said yes. I would have said automatically. In looking at the resume up until they played the Eagles, not a horrible resume. Coming into the season, they had some good big wins over the Ravens and then the Commanders. Um, and they beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. And hell, they beat the Chargers, they beat the Broncos, and the Falcons. And you can be on the Falcons, but there have been times this year the Falcons have been good, and they left them with 10 points. The Broncos was 6 points, even though it was week 2, and after week 4 is kind of when Bo Nix kind of did develop himself to what he could really be in the league. Um, so not really going to dispute that, but still they left them with 6 points. Boom, Chargers, 10 points. And a lot of this was the defense. And then they're beating teams that they're supposed to beat. They lost to one to Dallas, and then they lose to Cleveland later on. And then they beat Cincinnati, beat Cleveland, 10-3, not too bad as a team. And then boom, they just hit 3 straight off. Um, their defense hasn't looked the same over these last couple of weeks. Um, Offensively, you know, they've struggled. Um, the Russell Wilson, I think we need to expect coming into these next couple of weeks, and then including plus, we need to see the Russell Wilson we saw when they played Cleveland a couple weeks ago, or when they played the Commanders. Just the way he's been able to play and get to George Pickens and all that. Um, and look at a lot of the game film on when the team's better when George Pickens is getting the ball. It's a lot better. You can notice the team a lot better when George Pickens is getting the ball. Um. So yeah, that is where we stand on that. Steelers, they have one more game to go left of the regular season. They have to play Cincinnati once again, um, January 5th. And then the Chiefs, their only game left is against the Denver Broncos. The last time these two teams played, Broncos lost, but they Broncos got or Chiefs got really lucky, missed field goal, all that shenanigans. Um, then we get into the Ravens and the Texans. Um, this is probably the most disappointing game I've seen from a team. This is like the most worst effort I've seen from a team in some time. Um, the whole game was just dominated by Baltimore. Texans was able to get a safety, um, but after that it just nothing. The offense was dead. Um, Lamar had a really good game, um, and we'll talk about him here in just a little bit. Um, But it just looked like the whole game Baltimore had them on, like they were stomping on their throats, making sure they can't do nothing. How they were 4 for 15 on third down. Houston was. They only had 10 first downs to the Ravens 25 for 24 minutes of time possession, only 211 yards of total offense. Boom, total yards. That's all they had. Um, yeah, it was just not a good game for them. They had 6 tackle for losses. Um, Stroud got hit a couple times. It's just this year, Houston has not looked like Houston from last year. Houston was playing good football for a little bit. You know, the start of the year, it's like, okay, Houston, might be back, and then um, they've kind of had just this weird year. It feels like they've had to struggle for games where it's like they feel like they should have won, or like they should have beat them by more. Um, they do have that one win over the Bills, um, and then right now Bills are on fire, and then they always have close ones with the Colts, and of course the game to the Jets. It's just this offense has not produced as what we all thought it would be this year. Yeah, yes, they've had injuries, Stephon Diggs, and then now they just lost Tank Dell, um, to a knee injury from last weekend. So they're losing players, but didn't have Stephon Diggs last year, and they were good, and they were still pretty solid when they didn't have Nico Collins in the lineup. Um, and of course, they held it with the Chiefs, but the Chiefs are now finally getting into their part of the seasons where like, oh, well, boom, we're finally gonna get into the action, prove why we're gonna three-peat. And I fear that that's what could happen again this year. And then this embarrassment to the Ravens, it's just very sad to look at. Now they got to play a 3-2 Titans team. Um, Speaking beat them 32-27 last time they played in November 24th. Um, and CJ Stroud last time 2 interceptions, 2 passing touchdowns. We're gonna have to see something because even though the playoffs are pretty much is already set for the AFC side, they still have a long road ahead of them towards playoffs. Um, Now looking at MVP side, I think it comes down to 2 or 3 people. Um, last year, Lamar. Um, I critiqued Lamar a lot for winning MVP last year because I didn't think he earned it. Didn't think he deserved it. And you look at the stats from who he competed with for MVP last year. A lot of people could agree, um, but they won't. So then you come into this year and Lamar is just having an outstanding year. 39 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions, only 4. He's playing really good football right now. Like this is probably his one of his best years. Between this one and his 2019 year, best years he's playing right now. Um, now if Lamar wins MVP this year, which right now he's on my high horse to win MVP right now. If he's now hitting on 3 MVPs, we need to see some playoff production right now. You're getting into the section of where you're getting up there with the legends who've won MVPs 3 times. Peyton Manning, Brady. I think Mahomes only has 2, maybe 3. I know he's around that range. And then Lamar hitting 3 MVPs. That's crazy, man. That's crazy to think about. Um, you got another guys in the talk, Joe Burrow. I would put Joe Burrow closely on that list only because of how he's played through the situations he's dealt with um, throughout this season. And let's be honest, this Cincinnati Bengals team ain't great. It ain't that good defensively, but offenses been able to stay with it. Um, the main thing is need to readjust into the offseason with Cincinnati. And you got to get this team ready defensively. So when you need to give Jamar Chase his big payday, boom, everyone will be happy. Um, but mainly it's just Joe Burrow, the way he's played this year by himself individually, in the situation he's in, and the stats that he's had. It's something you can't just not look at. And then you got Jared Goff. I think the 5 interception game really took a lot of people away, but he hasn't played that bad since. Um, Now we're gonna get into a point where we need to see Jared Goff produce. Like, we need to see him get into big games because a lot of the people on defense is getting injured right now for Detroit, and they gotta play San Francisco, and then they gotta go ahead and play Minnesota. There's a chance they can get the first seed, and all they have to do is win those 2 games. Well, they beat Minnesota. That's one of Minnesota's 2 losses this year. The other loss is to the Rams. Um, but this year, Detroit this year has been a crazy team. Um, they've blown out teams. They've beat the games that they need to beat to prove that they're contenders. Um, they've even been in nail biters against teams that they should have beaten, or that they've beaten, but they've been nail biters. Um, but this year alone with Detroit, the injuries and all this, we could potentially see in the best version of Jared Goff heading into the playoffs. And I think that's a big thing for Detroit. And I think it's a big thing for Detroit to look at and think about. Because if he plays his best football, and I'm talking better than any year he's played, better than some of the times he's had this year, and he goes out and he outperforms like you've never seen him before, man, people are going to be having parties up and down the street of Detroit for him. Like, I think Jared Goff is just getting into that groove right now. It's where he needs to put the team on his back. Injuries of the team is slowly starting to chip away. And there's no way you're going to win when you have an injury bug hitting your team. San Francisco, Dallas, for both examples, with both teams. And then outside of that, you have Josh Allen for MVP. But if you look at closely, what the NFL is going to it's going to be Josh Allen and Lamar looking for MVP. So now you have to observe both of them, and it's like, which one, has it more? Like, which player deserves it more than the other? A lot of me thinks Lamar should have it because he's played really well this year. This is, and like I said, this has been one of his best years, and seeing what he's been able to do also with Saquon Barkley, and just the potential what they could get into the playoffs with, and the advantages that they could have, um, with with that running game. Because if you get down into the cold and you need that running game to work, the Ravens have that playbook all set up just for that. So it's gonna be very fun to watch this offense going into the wintry cold and see how they're gonna be able to adjust. Because if they can be able to run on them, man. And the main thing is when they get into these big game situations, they have to know when to keep their players into play. I know there's been times when they've had big games and Derrick Henry didn't get enough targets and or rushes in this half, or he'd come in with 13 and then he'd only finish off with like 15 or 17. Um, you need to get them fully on, you know, because if you're gonna, because let's be honest, Derrick Henry, you get one big play out of him, it's gonna change the whole game. It's gonna change the whole way the whole defense is gonna play after that. Um, so, and like I said, when we get into the MVP conversation, I think Lamar has it and is gonna have it locked in by next week. Um, and then next thing you know, we have to see out of him is playoff production, and that's gonna be the big thing because now he's getting these awards. We need to see playoff production come with it. You got to keep the same energy for each quarterback. So that's what we're doing here. Um, Mahomes we can light off on because he's about to potentially hit a three-peat on championships. So going into this week though, Seattle plays the Chicago Bears. Um, Chicago Bears have been a disaster through this whole season. I think we've all have established that. Um, Seattle, on the other hand, they're getting into the playoffs, fighting for the playoffs, and it's weird. Seattle and Seattle this year is a team that not many people have talked about. Um, I know John Gruden calls Denver the anonymous defense because of not many people knowing that defense, knowing the team. But talking about a team not many people know about or talking about is Seattle. Um, when they've been able to fight through every game this year, whether if it's against a big record team or not, they've been able to play and play well. Outside of the Green Bay game, that was really ugly. Um, they were able to still fight at the end with Minnesota, then Cardinals. They come back against the Jets, and then the one against San Francisco 49ers. In all these games, they've been able to come through and have some sort of good outship with it. Um, Now, if they make the playoffs, which I think they are based off how the rankings are looking right now, I think everything's starting slowly now to get into the pieces where I think the Rams are in a spot for the playoffs already. Um, or they're fighting it with the Rams, I believe. Either one. Um, Geno Smith. I feel like not many people talk about him either. Like he's been starter the last 3 years, but it's crazy to see where he's come from then to now, and to now it's like he can go on any team, be a good backup, veteran quarterback that people can rely on just based off these last 3 years. Any team would want that. Um, so that's pretty cool to see. But now they have to play Chicago. Caleb Williams. This team in general has just been a disaster. The offense is dead. Um, since they fired uh, Eberflus, they haven't scored more than 20 points, and all their opponents have let up 30 or more. So this isn't a good one for Chicago, I don't think. And we're getting into a situation to where we all know Chicago ain't a great franchise. Um, the next part is who you have to look forward to as head coach. Because you can look at a bunch of options. If it was down to me personally, down to the wire, Ben Johnson would be perfect for Chicago. He has the perfect weapons around him to make the offense look great and to make Caleb Williams look fantastic. Um, whether Chicago does that, I don't know. The ownership for a lot of teams now is really shitty, and then some of the other ones are really good. So I think Seattle's gonna win, of course, but it's just crazy on how shitty Chicago has been um, since that loss to Washington earlier this year, and the way the mistakes have just been piled on after each loss, and you think about it, it's like you change two or three mistakes from one play of each of the games, boom, they're in a playoff record. They're fighting for playoffs as well. Um, that's just crazy to think about. Going into the Chargers versus the Patriots. The Chargers have been fighting the last couple of games. They've had them two big losses. Um, to the Chiefs and then to the Bucks, but they did get a good one over the Broncos on Thursday night. They have to go in and play the Patriots right before they have to go and play the Raiders in their season finale. Um, Chargers have been a good team this year. They've done what they need to do. They've played to their strengths. And I think that's a good thing about Harbaugh is he knows, how to get the best out of each of his players, and but the strength of the team is what we're going to lean on to. And a lot of it, they've had to run the ball a lot. They've had to run some big options down with J.K. Dobbins, but they've also been able to show some of their new receivers like Lad McConkey, who's been shown to be a big time receiver down there over there with the Chargers, and I love some Lad McConkey action. Also, speaking of some good action, Brock Bowers. I love watching Brock Bowers. He's one of my favorite players in the league right now. And I'll talk about him here in a little bit. But the Chargers, they've been able to do everything, to their strengths. They've lost the games that we've expected them to lose, and they've won the games that we've expected them to win, and some of them have been surprises. I don't think they'll be second round team in the playoffs. I do think their first year. I feel like a lot of the teams this year, their first year, is really showing like we have future in these guys. Just give us another year. I feel like we have a talk about a couple of those teams, and I feel like Denver and the Chargers are two of those teams because they don't have the talent to beat a lot of these bigger teams. Yes, they will fight with the Chiefs, but you're in a rivalry game. You're in a conference game or a division game. Those are different. Those are way different than when you get from when you're playing the Eagles or the Lions or the Bills or any of that stuff. Um, so I do think Broncos, Chargers are two of those teams that they're not there yet, but you give them a year or two, boom, they're gonna be the best teams in the league. Um, and then Broncos, the Chargers. I think the Chargers are gonna beat the Patriots. Gerard Mayo, first year's head coach has not gone as planned. The best thing about the team is Drake May, and he's really been showing himself to be a future great in the NFL. Um, he's been able to fight and play. He's been playing well to what they need him to do. Um, I think a lot of it's going to come down to coaching, though. Gerard Mayo just kind of getting slipped right in there. It's kind of like what's happened with Antonio Pierce. Um, just player just gets roped in there, boom, they're gonna get a shot, and it's not gonna go well for them because they have to play a lot of these more experienced head coaches. Um, but we'll get down. We'll worry about that later down the line when they're fighting for their jobs, pretty much. Um, but going down with the Broncos and the Bengals, that's gonna be an interesting game. I think both teams are gonna show a lot of offense. There's not really gonna be much defense played except for Denver's defense, maybe. Um, but then you have Cincinnati's defense has been one of the worst in the league. So it's gonna be a fun game to watch. 3 o'clock game. So I think Denver takes it by 10 against the Bengals. Um, the Chargers. Oh, these are Saturday games. These are Saturday games. Never mind. I didn't even look. They're Saturdays. So Saturday, and this is week 17, not 16. Um, Sunday or Rams versus Cardinals. Um, Cardinals are pretty much eliminated from the playoffs. Devastating loss to the Panthers. They play the Rams. That's gonna be a fun one to watch. Last time I played, I think the Cardinals destroyed the Rams. So see what happens now, knowing that there's nothing for them to fight for, and the Rams are just fighting for playoffs and division against Seattle at this point. Um, I think Cardinals will put up a fight, but I think the Rams will win by 3. Now we get into the Sunday games. The Eagles will play the Dallas Cowboys. Um, the Cowboys this year, total disappointment. Um, but Cooper Rush has been playing lately, but I think a lot of it has just been who they've been playing against. Last time they played the Eagles, we saw what happened. Um, I think we'll get a different result. I think there will be a different. They'll show fight in the first half, but I think Eagles, they'll take over. Saquon will take over eventually. Um, although last time they did play him, Saquon only had like 64 yards, so that's pretty good. Um, but I do think Philadelphia wins and sweeps the Cowboys. As much as I hate to say that, I think that's just what's going to happen. We have the Jets and the Bills. These games are always close. I think Bills will take it by 5. Well, also talk about how much of a disappointment the Jets are this year. And also talking about if Aaron Rodgers is even going to be with the team next year. It's crazy with how much talent that they have on that squad alone. It's like they have Devontae Adams on top of everybody with Breece Hall, Gardner on defense, and Mosley, and all them guys. They have such a good squad, and they don't have the production side of things. Garrett Wilson, and hell, even sometimes Alan Lazard when he needs to plays well. It's just crazy seeing how this team could look so good on paper and just be 4-11, fighting for nothing at this point. Makes you look. It kind of looks sad because you look at Aaron Rodgers and like you grew up watching such a great quarterback, and we're now getting to his final years of production. And I think next year will be a guarantee of his last year, I believe. I think next year will be his final year. Um, Now, when they're gonna talk about it, I don't know. I don't think he'll retire off end of this year. I think he'll give it another shot. And if not, he'll leave, try to ring chase a little bit, and if not that goes, he'll retire like Brett did. So that's gonna be fun. Another game nobody really cares about: the Jaguars and the Titans. Two teams that only have 3 wins, fighting for a draft stock lose. Um, Hell, either one. And if you look at the draft stock, if you're thinking about the draft here, whoever wins this game loses because then they just go up on the draft. Now, only one of the teams are looking for a quarterback, obviously with the Titans, and Trevor Lawrence, who we should be looking for on the bust list soon, potentially. I think we could be talking about a bust talk for him. Um, but it's good. It's gonna be a bunch of nothing. Mason Rudolph, Mac Jones, quarterback duo. Um, I think Jaguars win by 2. And then we have the Saints and the Raiders. Um, Two idiotic fan bases going at it at once. That's always fun. Um, the Raiders have been obviously huge disappointments this season. The only bright spot has been Brock Bowers. Um, and then how they're going to be getting potentially a quarterback, even though with the loss, it still could fuck them because, or with the win they had last week, it could still fuck them. And regardless of what Antonio Pierce said, yes, you're trying to win games and everything, but man, if you're gonna win games, you at least gotta have a backup plan for what you're gonna do for when you need to get a quarterback. And you could think, you could think of what they could be looking for in quarterbacks. They could look into some young guys. They can look into some older guys like Sam Darnold. But looking at the young guy, probably what their options are going to be like. But hell, like I said, they could still try to find a guy like Sam Darnold, or hell, even if the Vikings would be crazy enough to do this trade J.J. McCarthy away, to help develop J.J. over there for the Raiders. Even though I don't think that would go well, Sam Darnold would be the more option. Or they get a new coach and then get Shador in and all that shenanigans. And then the Saints, they had the first 2 weeks of the year. We were talking about Super Bowl. Look where we are now. Oh, 2 weeks in, and this is what they get. 5-10, out of the playoffs. New head coach coming in soon. Man, this team was pathetic for a lot of the year. And the thing is like, what do you even do at quarterback? Because Derek Carr, there's been times where Derek Carr has been proven to where he can still play. I just don't think he's a quarterback that you can rely on all year to play that good all year round. Like, you're going to need 2016 Derek Carr all over you, like, every week. So, yeah, we're just down at that point with them. Next game, the Buccaneers versus the Panthers. Bucks trying to find some hope in life for the playoffs after that big loss to Dallas. Oh, ugly one for Tampa Bay. And now they got to play the Carolina Panthers, and the Panthers are playing strong right now. They're ending playoff hopes for teams over there in the NFC. Bryce Young has really developed himself into now we can now we could start talking about potentially the future of the franchise. He's played really well to what they've been giving him, and then with Dave Canellis is on offense. Um, it's been a rough road this year, but they've shown at the end of the year, and this is what they're going to be talking about at the end of the year, going into next year. Like, we could find something now, because they've had times where they could be the Chiefs, where they almost beat the Eagles, like they almost beat those teams, um, and then now, try to end another team um, playoff race right now. If you look at it, they end the Cardinals last week. Now they're trying to end the Buccaneers. Panthers they're gonna be a team to look out next year. You could see it. Um, the Colts and the Giants. Um, Giants self-explanatory. They've been really just terrible. Um, they're at the point where they're just trying to find a new quarterback. And you look at that team, it's like Malik Neighbors is the only good thing about that team if you look at him. Um, now you get to the quarterback aspect. Who is perfect for Brian Daboll's offense? Who is going to be that guy? And you look right at it, it's going to be Shedeur Sanders. I think we all could look at it. It's going to be Shedeur Sanders. Um, so, and if it's not Shedeur, I don't know who they really go after. I think Shedeur fits, what Brian Daboll is trying to fit on offense the most. Um, but right now they're pathetic, and honestly, if we're being real here, if Brian Daboll somehow gets fired because of GM mistakes and not giving him the best team that he could give him, that's some bullshit. Because I think Brian Daboll is an awesome coach. I think he's a really good coach. Um, and so if he gets fired over this team's mistakes, it's just another case of bad organizations make bad mistakes. Um, and the Colts, I think they're gonna win. So, Dolphins, Browns, nothing really to fight for either one of these teams. I think it's gonna be down to Dolphins beats the Browns by 10. And then we have a big game, Minnesota versus Green Bay. Minnesota, they've been a real team this year. And you think about this team. You think about this team a lot of their 2021 team. Of how good they've looked, but this team, I think this team in particular, has a shot to potentially see a Super Bowl. And a lot of it has to do is if Sam Darnold plays to his part. He needs to play his part through every step of the way to get where they need to go. Because the defense, they could do their part. Offense, they could do their part, and it's just Sam Darnold needs to get his part in, and he's done his part well this year. Coming in as a backup, and then now suddenly, boom, you could be fighting for a Super Bowl. Like, that's some crazy shit to think about. So it's like, if you do your role, play like it's like the last game of your life, he's gonna be fine. Green Bay, at this point, they're pretty much in the playoffs already, but they're trying to get some big wins off their checklist. So that to be a very good game, probably game of the week. Oh, actually, game of the week might be this one: Commanders Falcons. I said a lot this year. Bo Nix was potential rookie of the year, but after seeing Jaden Daniels, play after what he did against the Eagles. Yes, the Eagles gave up a lot of turnovers, and Jalen Hurts got hurt and all that, but he played really well. He threw some really good passes I don't see many quarterbacks make. So that's a good thing to look forward to. Um, Now, Washington, we have to see what they can do, see if they're a real contender, see if there's still stuff they need to add on with the team. And Dan Quinn, he's done a real good job with this team. He's done a real fantastic job. And now the big part with the Falcons, Michael Penix. Michael Penix Jr., he's one of the best quarterbacks coming out of the draft, in my opinion. It was him and Bo Nix and Caleb Williams right down in there. Um, were up to my favorites I liked. Um, and I'm not saying I didn't like Jane Daniels. I thought that they were better. Jane Daniels is looking like the best right now. Um, but not right now. Michael Penix is now getting his shot, and then Bo Nix getting his shot over there with Denver. Um, this game is gonna be the biggest for Bo Nix, or for Michael Penix, to show if he's really in with the big leagues. Like, is he really that guy right now? Is he better than Kirk Cousins? And if that's so, Kirk Cousins might be leaving. That's where we're at right now. So it's gonna be a good game. And then you got Monday, Lions, 49ers. I think Lions are gonna destroy them. 49ers have been pathetic. There's nothing left of the team, so we're at that with them. So there you go. I hope you all had a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. College football playoff talk will come sometime at the end of this week or next week. See y'all later. Have a good one. Peace.